Hello, I'm Jeff Hajek. I'm the owner and founder of Action, and just going to talk to you a little bit about an event that happened this morning. So I woke up this morning, and like I normally do, I go and check my email, and I got a message from my email service provider where I send out my subscription messages, and I had a person unsubscribe, but the response was a fairly negative response and a fairly nasty one at that. So I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. So I'll be looking off camera a little bit, but I want to read you this response that I got. This is the explanation about why they unsubscribed. And it says, as many of your ex-subscribers have commented, you falsely advertise free downloads, force registrations like dangling a carrot, spin the public in cycles, and never make available the download unless a fee is paid. In my book, that's purposeful false advertising and certainly an unethical practice. Shame on you. Please remove me from all association with your practice. So that one hit pretty hard. I try really hard to be ethical in how I do my business. I try to be very forthcoming in what to expect with my subscriptions. I did switch recently to a model instead of being able to download whatever you want right away. There is a series of emails, so I bundle them together. And you might go through a series of emails and you get a different download every day. But I've got over 100 downloads, so I feel pretty good about the fact that I give away a lot of free things. I just don't give them away immediately anymore. So I think some people go through that and they look at it and they want everything right away, and when they can't get it right away, they start clicking, trying to figure out how to get it right away and go around the system. And the only way to do that is to pay for it. If you want everything immediately, you can pay for it. So it is designed as a way to create longer relationships with people and to generate some revenue if people want things immediately, if there's a specific set of customers that want things right away. So there's some validity in that it's hard to get everything you want immediately, but I try to make that clear. Now, I do change my process from time to time, and it's quite possible that something was left there from an old process where you could download whatever you wanted right away, and that the person saw that. But the key point about this message that gets to me is that a person never gave me a chance to respond. So they just came out and accused me of being unethical and didn't even try to solve the problem. So that's a little bit hard for me to handle because I do take, like I said, I do take a lot of pride in being really forthcoming and honest in how I do business. So that hit hard. And I started to respond. But one of the things I learned a long time ago is never to respond when I'm feeling emotional about something. So I stepped back and said, yep, I'm pretty emotional about this. It hurt. I was very defensive about it. So I tried to take a step back. And it reminded me that years ago when I first wrote my book, What Do You Mean I Gotta Be Lean? I had something in it, and I call it the How You Think links. And it's a little model, and the name, as I get more refined, I don't really like the name anymore, but it tells you what it is. And it's basically how you think about things. So let me walk you through that real quick. Essentially what it is, an event happens, so some kind of external stimulus, something outside of your control, it's a trigger. And the first thing you have to do, a lot of people think you just jump into the emotion about it, but you don't. The first thing you do is you interpret the event. And you have to decide, what does this event mean? And that's what triggers your emotion. So the emotion has to first have an interpretation. So if somebody does something, in this case, the person had the event that they tried to download something and couldn't get it. So they had to interpret the event. And their interpretation wasn't that they misunderstood or that there's a problem with the process. Their interpretation was that I was a shady character and I'm trying to hook them with false advertising. So that was their interpretation, which then has a logical, emotional response, is that they were angry about this. So I can understand the anger. Now the problem is that the interpretation doesn't match my feeling of the situation. Now when you get emotional, the next thing you do is you decide how to act on that. So you don't just act, you go through your head and you make a decision. And as you go through the decision-making process, you have to weigh different facts, and part of your decision can be go back and look at the interpretation and see if maybe there was a mistaken interpretation and reconsider. And eventually, though, you have to act. And an action could be take no action. So your decision could be to not act. And that is actually an action, is to basically do nothing is a decision. And then you act on that decision by doing nothing. But then the thing that comes after that is the result. And the result, just like the event, the two ends of this chain are both outside of your control. So all the actions you have up until your action that you take, it drives that result. So the result is obviously something that comes from the action you take. So in this case, I try to break that chain and say, I'm not going to respond emotionally. So my decision came back and I said, what should I do? Should I respond to this person and try to convince them? And I weighed the odds of that person who's emotional listening to me and whether or not I wanted to get into a debate with somebody who was clearly upset with me. And I decided to take this route and put this out here and kind of talk about the situation. And that's kind of helps me get through the emotional part of it, but also puts this out there in a way that maybe somebody else can take something from this, and maybe I can help somebody understand a little bit better how to respond when there's a situation. So I tried to, like I said, try to step back and think what this person did. The question is, what is the result they want? And the result they wanted was originally to download a decision matrix. But now they don't have that matrix for me. And I've compared them, and my decision matrix is pretty good compared to other people's. It's easy to use, it's flexible, you can do what you want with it, clear instructions. So I really like it. And it's one of my more popular downloads. So now the person, because of the actions they took, they get a result that's probably negative. They could have asked me and said, they could have had an interpretation, maybe this is just a bad process. And it probably is. It's probably something that happened in the process that either I didn't understand how it would go about. Every time I change a process, there's the potential for something to break. Or it was unclear, or they missed something that I said about it, or they had a difference in understanding. I wasn't clear about what to expect. But the key is that this is a foreseeable response. If you blast the person and call them unethical, they're probably not going to go out of their way to help you out. So now the person doesn't have what they wanted initially. So whatever the result was, it was a foreseeable result for their actions. Now my side, I'm trying to look at this and say, what can I get as a good result of this? And again, I'm trying to get a good result here by putting some information out and helping you think through, helping you learn more about this behavioral and emotional and psychological connection between the event and the result. So I'll put a link on here on the screen on a video here, so you can go back and take a look at the full thing. And it's in my book, What Do You Mean I Gotta Be Lean, in more detail. But I talk a lot about this, about how you can break the chain at any point. And the easiest point is on the interpretation, because once you go down the path of emotion, it's hard to figure that out. So when something happens, I encourage you to look at the result and take a brief pause and think about all the possible interpretations for that event that just happened. And what you're looking for is the most likely one. And you might have to actually go and ask for more information. So the event, you may only know part of what happens, and you want to get more information so you can make a better interpretation. But once you get emotional, it's really hard to back off of that emotion. So try to derail this chain or control the direction the chain goes in the interpretation step. So take that brief pause. And ironically, while I'm here getting this email that set me off a little bit this morning down that bad path, not like I got super angry or anything, but it did affect me, because it is something, it's my triggers to be accused of being dishonest, and it's something that really bothers me. So as you can tell by this video, I'm emotional about it. It affects me. But what actually happened this morning also, I went into the freezer and I noticed that, we have a blender and it has a individual serving smoothie attachment, but it's made of glass, and somebody had taken the frozen smoothie in the blender attachment and put it in the freezer. So my concern was that, it's a glass container and it could break. And I asked my son if he did it, and he said no. So I texted my wife about it and just said, hey, please don't put this in the freezer. But then I realized after her response, I said, I probably shouldn't have done it like that. So I emailed back and said, hey, sorry, I didn't mean to start with my first text of the morning like that. And it helped her get off that irritation that I'm criticizing as my first text. So, I made the same mistake that this person I feel like did with me, is instead of asking for clarification or talking about it, it was more accusatory. So I, even though I know this stuff and I write this kind of information, it's still hard sometimes. The key is to be able to step back and, come off of your emotion and try to redirect the situation into a more positive outcome. So now doing this video is a much more positive outcome for me than getting into a debate about whether my practices are good or bad. But it's not to say I'm not going to look at the content of the email and try to understand. So I've gone back and looked at some of my subscribers and see what comments there are. I am considering how to redo my email subscriptions to make them a little bit more accommodating to people, because I do have some issues with trying to make different systems work together. Small business, I don't have a large IT team supporting things, so I try to piecemeal things together. And sometimes it doesn't come across the way I really want it to. It doesn't work the way I want it to, so there's a lot of accommodation I put on you guys when you're trying to download and do things. So I'm trying and work that out a little bit better. So it's a steady, slow progress of trying to get that balance between good marketing and good relationships and ease of use for my customers and my subscribers. So I'm kind of starting to ramble here a little bit. I will, like I said, I'll put the links up here for the information I put out, and hopefully you got a little bit out of this morning, and kind of my incident is a little bit interesting to you. So give me your comment down below. Let me know if this kind of video is helpful to you, whether I should keep doing them, whether they're interesting, any thoughts you have about the situation that I faced this morning, if you had a similar situation. Just a sort of conversation about it. So just again, comment down below. And as always, I appreciate if you like and subscribe to my channel. Helps me out a lot, and I very much appreciate when you do that. This is Jeff Ajak from Action Continuous Improvement, signing out. Thanks for watching.